All the second stage tanks now pressurized. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with Buddy.
Gosh darn those men's rights activists in their equally shared parenting rights? HBR Talk with Hannah Wallen. The feminist crusade against fatherhood is not a new topic to HBR Talk, but one that keeps coming up over and over due to current events. Its history begins with a backlash against the custody and property rights that accompanied men's responsibilities to their families. Prior to the 19th century, it was a man's openly legally bound duty as a husband and father to fill the provider and protector role, right down to being responsible for any crimes his wife committed. He was responsible not only for the full financial welfare of their children, but also of his wife, even if she had an income of her own, and she had legal recourse if he failed to provide. As part of that role, should there be a divorce without a finding of fault against him, he was entitled to retain custody of all children from his marriage, and any property he deemed necessary for provision for their needs. A wife who voluntarily left her husband without legal cause was abandoning the family and was not entitled to support. She had no legal recourse. When 19th century feminist Carolyn Norton separated from her husband, she could not divorce him without ruining herself socially and financially. She found herself in the situation many men experience today. He had complete control of all marital property and her ability to see their children, and he abused that control. Norton looked for legal means to counter her husband's alienation of her from her children and found none. With no legal recourse, she began fighting to change the law. She penned 2 items: the bill that would become the Custody of Infants Act of 1839, followed by her, quote, plain, end quote, letter to the Lord Chancellor regarding the bill, with the goal of justifying making maternal custody the legal standard when parents of young children separate. The Custody of Infants Act was the original version of what is now referred to as the Tender Years Doctrine, the basis upon which it became traditional in systems influenced by English common law to place custody of children in divorcing families with the mother. Throughout the 20th century, this was the norm in divorcing families, with fathers only retaining custody in rare cases of maternal abandonment, or where a mother's unfitness for custody was so blatant and obvious the court could not ignore it. American feminists pushed against the control men had over their families' finances, taking great pains to ensure that any change they achieved that reduced or eliminated that control didn't reduce the responsibilities it existed to facilitate. They also pushed for changes in the way divorce was handled, leading to no-fault divorce, wherein a couple can separate without the reasons why the marriage ended having any impact on custody or property division, so that when the at-fault party is the wife, it does not reduce her advantage in the courtroom. In the latter half of the 20th century, they added their domestic violence narrative to divorce cases, fighting for greater legal recourse in divorce proceedings if the wife leveled accusations of abuse against her husband as part of her case. In the U.S., this climaxed in 1994 with the adoption of the Violence Against Women Act, which influenced state law all over the country and enabled women to use accusations as leverage to obtain full custody, the lion's share of marital property, and hefty, even punitive support obligations. Women abused this power, leveraging their control over their ex-husbands' access to their children for control over their lives, many even simply refusing them any contact and alienating their children from their fathers. Even joint custody arrangements typically make the mother the primary residential caregiver, with the father's time limited to pretty much the same schedule he'd have if she had full custody and he merely had visitation rights. In the United States, custody is awarded to mothers over 80% of the time, despite their being less financially equipped to support their children. This also results in mothers receiving child support awards much more often, and even when fathers receive support, they receive less. U.S. men began fighting back as feminist leadership tightened its grip on family law, with fathers' rights groups emerging and growing throughout the 80s and 90s in response to mothers' abuse of these laws and of prevailing social attitudes. As more men became aware of the situation they faced, online forums began growing for discussion of the plight of divorced fathers and their children, as well as strategizing on how to handle issues like alienation, maintaining child visitation around an ex's frivolous restraining order, navigating the increasingly abusive child support system, and avoiding homelessness and jail while trying to support their ex's household along with their own. As the 20th century ended and the 21st began, fathers began pushing for custody reform, with the concept of equally shared parenting arrangements beginning to gain popularity. At first, with states applying such arrangements at parents' request and only until the child was school age, feminists didn't address the idea. Soon, however, fathers' groups began pushing for 50-50 shared custody to be the default arrangement in uncontested divorce cases, with parents being able to opt for a different arrangement if that didn't suit their situation, or either parent being able to contest the arrangement if they felt it was unfair to their situation. Support obligation would naturally be affected. That sent feminists into a panic. They fought it, and of course they did so dishonestly. In 1996, the National Organization for Women had released an action alert on fathers' rights groups. Their statement, labeling mothers entitled to the presumption that they're better caregivers and more important to their children, labeling dads deadbeats and abusers, and essentially claiming divorced fathers only want to maintain their relationships with their kids to get out of their child support obligations and use them as weapons against their ex-wives. As fathers' groups began pushing for equally shared custody, feminists used those same arguments to oppose it, while also lying about the nature of any bills that were introduced. Their main claim was that if passed, bills that would make equally shared parenting rights the default in uncontested cases would somehow force judges to place children with abusive fathers. The men's rights movement has been watching feminists use this strategy in opposition to equal parenting rights in the U.S. and Canada for 15 to 20 years now. It's becoming obvious that it's an international issue, possibly organized, with feminists in Spain using the same narratives to pretty much deny fathers post-divorce relationships with their kids, UK feminists employing it against paternal rights, French feminists going so far as to label fathers' interest in ensuring their kids are actually biologically their children abuse, and, as we were alerted to most recently, Italian feminists using it to attack equally shared parenting legislation in their country. The bill addresses parental alienation. It will replace default maternal residential custody and paternal child support obligation with equally shared parenting and calculation of child support based on parents' incomes and time with the kids. Fathers will no longer be arbitrarily excluded from their children's lives at the mother's request. The bill requires mediation prior to divorce, giving parents the opportunity to come to an agreement without having it imposed by a judge. It repeals the article of the country's penal code which criminalizes failure to pay alimony following divorce. For these reasons, the bill stands accused of attempting to cancel years of social advancement. Feminists have claimed it would be a disincentive for women in abusive relationships to leave. Another complaint, the proposal to require adequate living accommodations for children of divorced parents in order for a parent to keep their children in their home for overnight visits, would penalize the lower income parents, and yep, you guessed it, women most affected. This portrayal of women as victims of equal legal consideration for fathers on the false basis of presuming fathers deadbeats and abusers is essentially a worldwide feminist strategy, one that fathers' rights groups will have to confront anywhere they fight for equal consideration in family court. But feminism is totally not about hating men, right? Hello and welcome to HBR Talk 63, Feminism's Worldwide Daddy Issues. I'm your host, Hannah Wallen, here with that adorable specter of death, Prim Reaper, and nonsense annihilator, Lauren B., for a chat session on feminism's daddy issues. But first, a reminder. As you know, the social media gulag is ever expanding, which is one reason why we've diversified to multiple platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and audio-only formats. The Badgers, we are everywhere. So if you want to be able to keep track of it all, remember, go to badgerfeed.com and register to receive notifications. After all, With all of those non-shadow bans, you need notifications from badgerfeed.com to tell you what we're doing and when. And if you're still listening to our live streams on the main Honey Badger radio channel, please, that's old news. For live streams, the Badger live stream channel is where to be. So head on over there and join the chat. And last but not least, don't forget to like and share this and other Honey Badger live streams so they'll have more social media visibility. The solution to social media throttling is to use 1,000 whispers to reach every ear that's closed off from one muffled shout. That's our end of the balance of power. Either we use it or we lose it. So here we go, guys. Italian feminists actually labeled a system designed to separate fathers from their kids and bankrupt them. Cultural advancement. And they labeled the idea that mothers should be financially responsible for their kids just as much as fathers are a novelty. What the hell happened to feminism is about equality?
Well, I mean, they're obviously still operating under the original situation where women couldn't work anymore, or women couldn't work, and you know, they were supported by their husbands, so therefore getting it back to that would be really terrible because women can't work still, right? I mean, that's the way it still is, right? Oh wait, no, it's not. No, it's not. They fought for certain rights. They have them. Now we have to make sure it's equal for everybody, ladies. That's the way it works. Drives me bonkers.
Yeah, this is something that I've been watching this go on, for the last several years. Been paying attention to feminists' attack on fathers and fatherhood and everything. And that bit just blows my mind. The idea that a woman is still entitled to a man's income after she leaves the marriage. It just really undermines feminist equality claims in my book. And of course, it really also undermines the idea that women are the best caregivers, because here you have this movement trying to separate children from one of the greatest benefits they can have in their lives, the mentorship and love of a parent. And everybody gets two at birth, right? You're born with two parents. Everybody has two at conception. You're supposed to grow up with two. You're supposed to have that balance of male and female teaching you how to adult as you grow up. And they cut half of it off.
Yeah, it's kind of messed up. Like, even my mom, who wound up leaving when I was like 3 years old or whatever to go sleep around with a bunch of dudes behind my dad's back. Even she's like, yeah, the idea that a child could be taken away from their father entirely, that's fucked up. So there you go.
It's, well, that's what happens when you spend a generation telling women that they can do everything. They start to believe it, and now it's just let's just completely remove the father. Just, you don't even need him. Just forget about it. But let's still take his money, because we need that part of a man is still valuable. So, oh God, it's just drives me crazy. It really
well, that
does.
part you can still use to buy things for yourself, right? So there you go. Clearly, that's all he's good for anymore.
Yeah,
I feel gross even saying that.
I know,
it's sick. It's sick.
Well, and the really dumb thing about it is, aside from, like, obviously there's the cruelty. That's dumb. It's dumb to be cruel. It's self-defeating to be cruel. You cut other people off from yourself when you are cruel, and you lose out on the benefit of your potential cooperation with them, even if you don't want to have a relationship anymore. But the really dumb thing about it, in terms of the woman's end of it, is here you have the potential for that cooperation leading to you having the opportunity to improve your income situation. Like, I've seen ex-wives cut their nose off to spite their ex-husbands so many times. Well, I want to go to school, but I don't have time. I can't afford, childcare. You have a built-in partner in child care. Why don't you allow him his time with his children like the state has record of you agreeing to? And you know, make that suggestion, and they'll look at you like you have grown a second head. And it's just because they're angry at him, just because they don't love him anymore, just because they don't want to be with him anymore, they'll turn around. Oh, I don't want to give him his time with the kids. How dare you even suggest that? But I can't go to school because I don't have childcare. I can't get that degree because I don't have childcare that I could be taking advantage of, you know. And I really, really care about my kids, except, you know, if they need paternal mentoring, and I don't care if they don't get that. That's the dumbest idea. If you love your children, why deny them that benefit?
Well, I mean, and not only that, but they're also denying their children a lot of benefit. They're denying them, like, there have been so many demonstrable benefits for a child to have both parents in their lives. So when she is deliberately casting the father away from her child's life, she's doing it because it feels good to her to keep the children all to herself and to hurt her ex. She's not doing it because it's a benefit to the child, because we can see in many years, in the last little while, the negative outcomes for children who do not have both parents in their lives. So no, it's like, not only is she cutting off her nose to spite her face, but she's cutting off her whole face to spite her face and her children.
Yeah, it's completely self-motivated, you know. It's what's that saying about a woman scorned?
Yeah, yes. No, hell hath no fury. And of course, who wants to be in hell?
Exactly. You know, it's just so sad. I really feel bad for the kids, because that's the one who loses out, you know, and women lose sight of that. They just don't care. Yet you say you care about your kids. Well, obviously, demonstrably, the best interest for your child is to have his father there. But, you know, who cares when you got, you know, points to score?
Yeah, and see, I've lived through this personally, because I'm married to a divorcee, and he has an ex-wife, obviously, and kids from his previous marriage, and then we have a son. And I mean, I worked really hard to make sure that our whole family could be close together. We didn't have custody of his kids from his previous marriage. We moved away from our other family members and our close friends up in northern Ohio. We moved to southern Ohio to be closer to the ex when she fled to southern Ohio with the girls, so that they could have their father near them, that the siblings could all be close to each other, and grow up and know each other and everything, and so that our family could be together. And what really bugged me about it was, like, just watching a woman hurt her kids to spite her ex and hurt herself, because I was like, I knew I was marrying a divorcee. My first thought was, all right, so I need to be the support network. If he needs something, if she needs something, if the kids need something, that's going to be my role, because I'm taking this on. This is some responsibility I'm picking up because I love this family. And it just, instead, she saw me as a competitor. And that seems to be a very common thing. Women see the second wife that they've left. 70% of divorce is initiated by women here in the United States. And so they've left, they've walked out, they don't want him anymore. They've said, you know, go screw yourself. And another woman comes into his life, and all of a sudden she's the competitor. You know, it just blows my mind.
It definitely doesn't make any sense. But I mean, like, I work with a woman who her husband is actually going through very much that same sort of thing. And even worse, like, his ex took away their two daughters, and they're, I believe, in their teenage years now. But either way, basically, she has poisoned the wells so much that the two teenagers think like terrible things of their father, and they're like, no, I would actively not want to go see him. I don't want to talk to him anymore. And the things that this does to this poor guy is just ridiculous. And my coworker is obviously very upset by this. Like, obviously she cares about her husband and can see what this is doing to him. And obviously it's probably not great outcomes for the two daughters, but you know, this sort of thing just happens all the time. And actually, like, that's in a way, it's kind of a you can see it as a benefit, because some of the women who are experiencing this happening to their husbands, this terrible thing happening to them, they're starting to realize, oh, hey, this isn't so great. Maybe we should like stand up and talk about this and challenge this bullshit.
I think it's been said that one of the greatest reasons that women get into the men's rights movement is because they married men that, or you know, or in relationships with men that went through some shit like this. You know, it really opens your eyes. How can you not be sympathetic when you're watching a person that you love go through some shit that is from a failed relationship, that you can't control that? You know, it's of no fault of his own, but he's being dragged through the mud and just going through hell. How can you not be sympathetic towards his plight?
Yeah, it's painful. And I honestly, everything else that has ever happened to me, I would go through all of those things all over again to eliminate watching any of my loved ones go through some of the pain I've seen them go through. And that some of the worst things that I've seen are things that my husband has gone through. And I would really, you could give me encephalitis 10 times again, and I'd be like, all right, I'll go through that if you'll take away every rotten thing that she's ever done to him. And, you know, and and the worst part is, you watch your husband go through these things and you watch the kids go through these things. And, you know, you become invested in their welfare, because you don't just marry a person with a family and not become part of the family. You marry into a family, and you love the family. It's if you don't, there's something wrong with you, you know. Even if there's a bumpy start, I was lucky. My husband's kids are just like him. All three of the kids are all just like him, which is good, because you know, I can be kind of an asshole. So if our son has my husband's temperament, that'll protect him throughout life from being an asshole. But and the girls, they're just like him too. And so they were not mean to me. They didn't see it as a competition between moms. They did the usual kid things of testing the waters, you know, who's going to be more lenient and everything. But I had it easy with the kids. It was just, and I had it easy with the in-laws too, because they liked me better than they liked her. After she was so mean. But because I'm not a vindictive ex, that, you know, I've had ex-boyfriends before I got married. I had was proposed to like 7 times before I proposed to my husband.
Damn.
Wow.
So
okay.
Yeah, I just like, but I don't. There isn't anybody that I look back at and be like, oh gosh, he's dating somebody else. How dare she go out with my man? You know. So I've never had that. I never expected any of the things. You get blindsided by the meanness when somebody is vindictive like that, and you don't know the behavior pattern, because it's not something like, I can be vindictive if somebody hurts my family. Probably your biggest screw up in life could be doing something to my family, right? That would be a very big mistake. But not if somebody is close to somebody that I'm close to. I don't have the I'm missing that jealousy chip, I guess you could say, in my computing, and so I was blindsided by every little thing, and I didn't, not being able to anticipate it and not being able to prepare for it and maybe prepare to mitigate the pain that it causes the kids. That really was I always felt like, gosh, I should have done this, or gosh, I should have done, why didn't I prepare for this? Why didn't I set things up so this couldn't happen to them? And it's probably the biggest guilt trip that I send myself on a regular basis. And so if that's happening to me, and like, I can be a real asshole, and I have that capability. If that's happening to me, it's got to be happening to women all over the country. And I imagine that's happening to women all over the world who are second wives, who are watching their husbands and their stepchildren go through emotional fallout and experience psychological abuse at the hands of an angry ex. And I'm sure that there are situations where there are second husbands who are going through that as well. The difference is, when a first wife engages in psychological and financial and even physical abuse because she's angry that her ex-husband has a second wife, the state facilitates it.
Yeah. Like I kind of just think about how easy it was for my husband's ex to just get complete full custody of their son and just have the power to kind of take him entirely away. And my husband hasn't seen him since he was 3 years old. And it kind of just messes me up a little to know that our daughter is never going to get to know her brother. Like I have seen pictures of him and he looks like a little one of my husband, and it just messes me up. And it's just like, is this ever going to be a thing where we're ever going to get to see him, or is this just going to go like this forever?
Adulthood is probably going to change things. I have family, and I'm not going to say which family it is because I'm not really sure I'm at liberty to, but I have family that had that situation. And it was a father that was a Rolling Stone, back in the day, and so he had an ex-wife when he got together with their mother, and then left her and married again later. And so there are multiple kids, some of whom are full brothers and sisters, some are half brothers and sisters, some are step brothers and sisters, and some of them didn't get to know each other till they were in their 40s and 50s.
Wow.
But they formed relationships, and fast relationships. You can't say you made up for lost time, but those rifts close quickly when the kids decide they want to get to know each other. And it's still a horrible thing to do to your children, to separate them from the other parent and from each other, but it's not a permanent arrangement unless the kids decide it's going to be.
Right.
But I want to get into the legislation itself. I looked the information up on the Italian legislation, and of course I'm having to look at this on sites where it's actually not in English, so I'm using Google Translate. But some of the things that I noticed, people were writing about it. There were complaints. Let's see if I can go back up to. I have this down at the bottom of the page. The details of the bill are sort of listed off here in a lower part of the one page, and it's got key points that they are discussing. Compulsory family mediation, which I think that looks like it's going to be similar to in the U.S. You want to get a divorce, you go to a magistrate, you don't go to a judge unless there's contested stuff. So the no-fault divorce, you get divorce papers, you fill them out, you go to the magistrate with your soon-to-be ex, the magistrate looks them over and says, we can't do this because XYZ is illegal, or government policy is that you have to do XYZ or whatever, and then you fix it, and they look at it again and they rubber stamp it, and you're divorced. If you can't agree on custody, or you can't agree on property division, then you go to a judge. So their compulsory family mediation, I think that starts with something similar to a magistrate, but they also you have to actually go to a counselor and receive counseling, and basically the goal there is to try to get you to not get divorced. So they're protesting against that. The idea of discouraging divorce, which, I don't know. I have seen some families that it's just not going to happen. They're not going to stay together. And there's an expense there. The first session is free, but if you have to keep going back, it's going to cost money. So I've seen some families that this would be a burden on them. But I've also seen some people get divorced that had problems they could have worked out, and they didn't.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What do you guys think of the idea of at least making a try before making it? You can't get divorced unless you can prove that you've had some sort of counseling, and it's not going to work.
I just didn't want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
I really don't know how I feel about that. I mean, I get it. You should try to resolve the marriage before, it comes to that. But if you know that this is not what you want to do, then it's really not very liberal to try to force someone to do something they don't want to do. And I was reading what the articles that you had posted, Hannah, and one of the things they were talking about is I just lost it. Anyway, I'll go back to the marriage thing. It doesn't benefit children to be in a marriage that is bad. I lived through that for very many years. My parents stayed married for 30 years. It should have ended a long time ago. But I did reap the benefit of my parents, of living in an A2 income household. So for that, I'm thankful and grateful. I really don't know where I would have been had that not been the case. So I see the benefit of sticking together for the children. However, it really can breed some very, very psychologically damaging experiences.
Like being in a high conflict house. Yeah. The emotional fallout. Yeah.
It's not fun. It's not fun. And so, it's like when it comes to thinking about the best interest of the child, what takes more importance? What's the bigger priority? For your child to be happy, or for your child to be more financially stable?
I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead. It's a tough question, and I don't really know the answer because I don't have kids. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that, like, if you're in a situation where you're planning to try and stick it out for the kids, I think absolutely in that case, like, you should do your damnedest. I don't care if it involves going to mediation, counseling, or just like working very hard to make it an optimal situation for the children so that they don't have to live in that kind of contemptuous household. I think that that's really, really important. But regarding Hannah's question, I think that some couples can certainly benefit from counseling before trying to divorce. But I think that, like, on the other hand, like, there are some people where it's just going to be a thing that has to happen because for whatever reason these two people just they're not feeling it anymore, and maybe it's for the best that they be allowed to break it off from each other. But and there's a big clarification that needs to happen here. If that happens, if like in particular, because it happens 80% of the time, the woman decides that she doesn't want to be in this relationship anymore, then, you know, fine, you can get out of it, but stop expecting the benefits from your ex. Like, that should just be the simple part of it, right? Like, if you want to leave the relationship, that's fine. You can do whatever you want to do, go and be free and find your own path, but do not expect to reap the benefits from your ex-husband after doing that. That just does not make any sense. Like, I wound up leaving my ex, and that was fine. And even though I came into that relationship with like $25,000 in savings, and he came into it with $10K in debt, I still split our assets down the middle, 50-50, and I didn't wind up taking any further support from him, because it's like, no, that's a really shitty thing to do. It's just not working out. That's fine, but I don't hate the guy. I don't want to ruin his life. He deserves to have a fair life, and he deserves to have the benefits of the time that we spent together too, just as much as I did. So let's go our separate ways. That's the way it should be.
Black Knight Fool made an interesting point in the chat here. Perhaps if they make the requirement harder to get married, then that would reduce the divorce rate. And, you know, they used to do that. You used to have to get counseled before you got married. And depending on your religion, like my uncle on my husband's side is a minister, and he's the one that performed our wedding ceremony. And we had counseling sessions before we got married. We had questions we had to answer about our expectations from marriage, and our beliefs regarding child rearing and everything. And you know, he wasn't going to just, you know, I'll just do your wedding, and we won't take any precautions or anything to make sure that you're not jumping into this too quickly and everything. Which we were together for 3 years before we got married too. So. But in any case, yeah, this is something that I like that idea. In my opinion, you know, I'm a more libertarian person as far as mediation and counseling and all that. Government mandating it, I'm not necessarily for that, but I like the idea of it being available and the advice being given. That, hey, you know, and this is something that parents should be like. My parents talked to us before we got married. His parents talked to us before we got married. And we've lost something in our society where we don't see that as much. People don't feel like it's their responsibility to share their wisdom with the next generation in their family regarding what they've learned. And the next generation doesn't feel like it's their responsibility to consider that information. And they don't have to buy everything. Like, you know, you get your old maid aunt that says all men are pigs and she's glad she never got married. You might weigh that against the fact that, you know, she's 50 and single, and it might be because nobody wanted her. But yeah. You still have that information coming in from the older generations, and we've lost that. And a lot of the reason we've lost that is because in a lot of families there's no dad at home, so all you have is the women.
Right. We completely lost the entire sense of family. We don't know what it is anymore. Families stay together even through the rough times, so that they had to survive. You had to. And now that is completely eliminated. It's taken off of the table because now women can marry the government. And so when that happens, you have the government influencing what happens in your family. And I mean, for me, it's just clear as day. I can connect the dots. I don't understand why people can't.
Yeah, this is something that a lot of people seem to think is actually good. There are a lot of people who seem to think that having the government tell them what to do and influence the way their family works and be their guide and their father, you know, that's beneficial somehow. And in reality, it's led to a shitload of problems. I mean, we have, well, the fact that the government is now the arbiter of what you should or should not ingest, what you put in your body. Like now, we have one law, or rather one legal standard, because there's Roe versus Wade is a court ruling, not a law, but one legal standard that exists on the basis of the government not telling people what to do with their bodies, and a whole lot of laws that give the government permission to tell you what to do with your body. So we have problems with that. But I'm going to go on to the next ones.
If I could just say one
definitely.
other thing, I think the one of the biggest problems is that we have government in marriage. You know, if we could get the government out of marriage, I think that would solve a lot of problems. But it's never going to happen because it's a multi-billion, if not trillion-dollar industry. Try taking that money away from the lawyers who now no longer have to, adjudicate divorce settlements. Forget it. It's not going to happen.
It's probably the biggest lobby against getting government out of marriage. And this is something I started saying back when the debate regarding gay marriage really picked up steam in the late 90s and the early part of this century. Was that, why is the government deciding who can and can't get married anyway? What business is it of the government? Who lives with who forms a household with who, and what kind of family you have? That's not really something that the government should be deciding for people. That's their lives and their relationships.
Kind of goes against that whole pursuit of happiness thing.
Yeah. And so I'm not necessarily in favor of the government ordering private citizens to acknowledge and accept other people's lifestyles and say, yes, I will have to say this is good and I approve of it because the government says so. But I am absolutely against the government coming along and saying, you can't live together, you can't be together, you can't call this person your spouse, you can't have a family, you can't this, you can't that, because you're the wrong sex. It's the same thing as doing it because you're the wrong color. And they used to do that too, and it took a long time and a lot of growing pains to figure out that was dumb. And now they're figuring out, hey, it's dumb to do this with regards to people being the same sex. Someday maybe they'll figure out it's dumb for the government to be in the divorce business too.
Yeah, exactly. And just to go back to your point, like, my mom is white, my dad was black, and they were married in the 70s, in the early 70s. So I can directly relate to that statement. Yes.
Yeah.
So for me, the whole feminism thing, like, I saw the bullshit right away, and God, that's a whole other dichotomy. Like, I can go on forever about growing up in that household and the stories that my parents have. But anyway, let's move on.
I can kind of do that, but from the outside. I grew up with friends who were in interracial. There were the children of interracial marriages in a small town. And the way things were in our town versus the way things were outside of our town, let's say just some of my friends, when they went to college, they were kind of blindsided by people's attitudes. So it didn't go away in the 80s. It didn't go away in the 90s. It just got quieter and less frequent, but it's still there. And it's rough to deal with, and it's probably society's growing pains in terms of how people relate to each other. That's another one that I'm missing something, and I don't understand why I can analyze the things that we know about the human psyche and tribalism and all of that, but it still doesn't compute very well with me. So I get blindsided by it whenever I'm exposed to it, and of course it doesn't really happen much to me, but it's still something that, like I said, it just So when I see it, it blows my mind every time. But on with the details of this. This one, the English on this, the way it's worded is really weird, where it says fostering materially shared with equivalent times and a definition no longer left to the arbitrary causes of exclusion. So I am interpreting Google Speak there to mean they're talking about equal access, you know, equal time with the kids, where it's 50-50 shared parenting, and that the father is not being arbitrarily excluded from custody in that. And then it goes on as part of that, direct maintenance in the parent plan. So it's and repeal of the debit. Those three things seem to go together, and what it seems to be, this law, this bill is going to like mandate 50-50 shared parenting in uncontested cases. They will not be automatically assigning the father a set dollar amount as the child support debt, which apparently in Italy it's not like in Ohio, when they do child support, it's they look at the mother's income, they look at the father's income, they take the two together, and there's a percentage formula. This is how much of that, this is the percentage of that total the kids are entitled to, as this is what a family should spend on their kids to support their kids. And then the father's percentage of that total is his percentage of that debt. So if his percentage of the total is 60, he owes 60% of that debt. His child support then becomes that number, that 60% of the dollar amount that is the percentage of the total, if that makes sense. And if the mother's percentage is higher, then the mother technically owes child support. Well, then judges are also given some discretion where they can increase or decrease that amount. They also have the ability to look at details like she says he's working under the table, or he says she's working under the table and are actually earning another $1,000 a month that's unreported. You know, that can get really hinky, and a lot of men in the United States get assigned these just absolute huge draconian child support debts based on imputed income that the court doesn't have to prove they make. They have to prove they don't make it, and sometimes they can't. It's very difficult to prove you're not receiving income. You know, unless you can get somebody to say, no, this guy doesn't work for me, she lied. And so here in the United States, we end up with guys that end up homeless and in jail on the basis of not being able to pay money that they never receive, you know, not pay on income that they never receive. But in Italy, apparently, it's even worse. There's not even imputed income involved. They just say, well, you have to earn enough to pay this much because you're divorced and your kids are supposed to have this much money from you. And that's being taken out and replaced with a system that is more like what we have here, which imputed income can still be a problem in it, right? But it's not an automatic thing, and feminists are protesting that as well.
Well, especially when you can't necessarily guarantee that the money is being spent on the children to begin with. Like I've said this before, but there should be like a guaranteed system where that money is absolutely going to things that the children need, with like receipts and things like that. She should have to prove that this is being used for the children. Like my husband told me about how his dad would send child support and for things like shoes and clothes and other things that they needed. And he would still go and visit his dad wearing like torn up shoes, and it's like, okay, where is the money that I'm sending going? What is going on here?
Yeah, and I've also heard stories of moms that like they keep a set of worn out clothes and worn out shoes and stuff to send the kids to the dad with to guilt trip him too.
Oh jeez.
I've heard that.
That's so low. But I mean, the biggest problem, obviously, again, is the government deciding what you should spend on your kids versus the parents working together to make this decision. But the fact that feminists have actually come out and said, no, women should get an automatic award from the husband. We want all women to be given a dollar amount when they get divorced, and this should be the dollar, and it has to be mandatory. And this Article 570 that it mentions of the Penal Code is the article that makes it a criminal act to fail to pay your alimony. So what they're basically saying is women should be able to walk out of a marriage. They should be able to take the kids with them, whether they can support the kids or not, and they are owed a debt by the husband. He should not be allowed to walk away from the provider role that he has in that marriage. So they can give up everything about him except the provider role.
Yeah, and maybe if they are not ready to give up that role so easily, maybe they should, really evaluate if this is the best decision for them to be making, quite frankly.
Absolutely. This is again goes back to maybe we should, if we're going to have the government involved in marriage at all, then make it harder to get married. I kind of like that idea. You used to have a blood test too. My mom, when she got her blood test, they advised her that she needed to know the blood type of her firstborn, because if her firstborn, I think she's Rh negative and I'm Rh positive. I think that's the mix. It might be the other way around, but there's a condition that can happen when your Rh factor is the opposite of your baby. You make antibodies, and they don't attack that baby; they attack the next one, and it causes mental retardation.
Well, I mean, like all kinds of things. It can cause like anemia. It can, like jaundice. And
there's a shot you can get that prevents that. And my mom had to get that shot so that like my brother's actually a genius. Everybody keeps telling me they think I'm smart, but my brother blows me out of the water. Seriously.
The shot is actually called Rogam. I actually just had to get that myself because I'm Rh negative and my husband is positive, and it's like, oh well, we don't want that to go wrong. So there we go. Right.
And that's what happened. My mom had to get Rogam, and so that the antibodies that she made when she was pregnant with me would not attack my brother. Which I'm really glad she got the shot, because I really like my brother. He's a great guy. But
I'm so glad I'm not a breeder. I don't have to worry about these things.
Oh, it's not so bad.
No.
Doesn't sound like a bed of roses. Sorry, I'll sit this one out, ladies.
Oh, there's definitely a lot of work to being a parent. It's not something to take on lightly. I think we allow ourselves to think that it's just, I mean, rats reproduce, so how hard can it be, right? But we raise adult humans out of little baby humans, and that's a totally different things. With it being that way, yeah, it is a major challenge, and every parent works very hard, to make sure that they rise to that challenge, or their kids suffer. And I've seen a lot of kids suffer because their parents didn't rise to meet that challenge.
Well, yeah, the good parents do that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's no test for.
Of course not.
Who's going to be a good parent? So.
Yeah. And everybody beats themselves up over whether or not they are too. I do that. Every parent does that. Everybody doubts themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I'm already starting to have doubts, and it's like, oh, I hope this is gonna work out okay.
That's a good sign. If you didn't, it would be worrisome. I've got some super chats I'm going to go over real quick as well too. Let me get back to that window. I've opened it separately, but we actually have a build up because I haven't been watching for them. So we have our traditional Master Rogue super chat for $2 that says Prim and a huggy face and a heart and a smiley face, and then he says also elves, and I'm not sure what that's about.
I don't know.
Explanation. We have Raymond Baxter gave us 10, I think that's pounds, because the euro thingy looks like any. I always get mixed up euros and pounds. 10 pounds, and said, "Wish I could donate more." And well, Raymond, we are grateful for everything. So thank you very much. And Mr. Roboto gave us $5 and says, "Idea parent license with tax benefit for the kids, so both are on the same page for obligation." I can say right now the big problem with that is you're governing people's bodies and people's reproduction, and you're going to end up with forced abortions because people are going to get pregnant without your permission, which is that's horrible. The idea sounds good on its face until you consider the implementation. I would discourage people from having children unprepared through advice and education. I would discourage people from having children unprepared, but I wouldn't mandate it. I would simply say, there are going to be consequences to this, and it's not the rest of society's responsibility to mitigate those consequences.
Right.
And see, we have somebody's, the DCV Titan gave us $5 Canadian and said, "Someone is humble bragging." Yes, I am. I have had 7 proposals, damn it, and I think that's, I can't say that it's an achievement, but it's kind of weird. So, there you go.
Listen, I have not unlocked that achievement even once. So
I was that girl that if I knew a guy and there wasn't anything, I didn't have a compelling reason to tell him no in terms of, going out on a date, and he asked, I went. Like there really had to be, and I would just go to movies and go out to eat and everything. I'd ask people out and go grab a bite and stuff like that. So I dated a lot, but I didn't worry about whether we'd already hit it off or not. You get a chance to do that by getting to know each other, right?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I think that's part of it. I think that's part of why. It's not that I'm anything special in terms of being that girl that every guy wanted to marry. It was just, I went out on a lot of dates. I went out on a lot of dates with people that I was never probably going to get any further interested in than let's sit and watch the same movie together and laugh about it or joke about it or be scared of the thing on the screen together. And that's it. So I ended up with 7 proposals. But because I got to know a lot of people. Mr. Roboto gave us $5 and said, "Another idea, give marriage licenses an expiration date. 5 years, 7 years, re-up 10 max. Re-up or get married once, no divorce ever." Well, there's like all these ideas that have actually been tried. Honeymoon, the term honeymoon actually has a history. And if I remember right, it was your marriage was a test for a year, your first year. This is something that I've been out of the loop on for a while. It's something that I learned through being a practicing Wiccan back in my silly days. And not to disparage everybody that's a practicing Wiccan, but I just don't buy into it anymore. I'm not really a religious person anymore. Spiritual person, yes. Religious person, no. But yeah, it used to be in some societies that you lived together for a year before you got married, and then there's other societies that you get married and it's arranged. Love doesn't have anything to do with it. You're stuck together, and you will be invested in each other's welfare in your household, or your household will fall and you'll be destitute. And somehow people survived both of those situations. So I think it's I think it's more on the couple than anybody else. People just have to adult up.
Yeah. And that's hard because that takes work. You know, it's easy to be passive and just let life wash over you, but to actually take action and be responsible for your decisions, it's not easy. You know, we don't have a society full of mentally fortified people who can own their shit. You know, it's really sad, and I don't have a lot of hope for the future. I would feel unbelievably horrible about putting a child on this earth with the amount of degeneracy that is happening, and there's just a lack of any kind of common sense to try to make sense of it all. And, you know, that's why I love what we do here, because speaking truth, like, and that, like, I'm guided towards that. You know, I cannot for the life of me understand why people are just so resigned to sit back and let things be the way they are and not say something or see that there's something wrong and not want to change it, or not even try to think about why these things are happening in the first place. So there's a lot of change that needs to happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think it starts from conversations like this. So
Very much so.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. And it's when one of the things that I was worried about when I found out I was pregnant with my son is, you know, what kind of world is he going to grow up in? And of course, you know, the things you have to worry about with a boy are a little different than the things you have to worry about with a girl, because all of society pretty much is geared toward protecting and caring for women. Women and their children, right? And that's so much so that they put us in a group that it's all one word, women and children, spelled with no breaks in it, you know. And it's like, you raise a boy, you are raising somebody that in the United States, this isn't the way it is in every other country necessarily, but in the United States, the federal government claims ownership of boys. And they do it through selective service. The moment he reaches adulthood, he has to sign his ownership papers that you know, the government owns his body, and the government for a certain number of years is entitled to activate the draft and snap him up into the military and send him into the world with a gun and order him to fire it at other people, or be killed, or be court-martialed for refusing, or at least tried and punished for refusing. I don't know if they court-martial you if you try to dodge the draft because you're not in the military, but in any case, yeah, they don't do that to girls. They only do that to boys, and that kind of thing that hit me when my brother turned 18, and it just seemed so unfair. And I was just from hearing, you know, that he'd registered for selective service and realizing that it had to do with the draft and everything. It just, at the time, I was just I was a 20-year-old woman, still pretty immature, right? Still didn't fully understand this stuff, but it still pissed me off. Even not fully understanding what that represented, it still pissed me off. But as a mom, it was like, it's enraged. I didn't want to talk to anybody for several days after my son signed his selective service papers. That just, when he had to register, and he couldn't, you know, a boy can't, a young man can't apply for college loans without filling out that paperwork. If he is not signed up to be drafted, he can't get college loans. He can't get college grants. He can't go to school unless he can pay for it in cash. So, yeah, there are things about raising kids that, you know, you look at it like, do I really want to do this? But it's still a life. And, you know, you're still dealing with just the fact that life is hard doesn't eliminate the benefits of being alive. And, you know, I just, I'm not going to deny a life because there are things that need to be fixed. But, you know, I always wanted to be a mom. And, you know, I married somebody who wanted to be a dad. So we have kids. But it's right that people step up and want to change things. And we've raised fighters who will not just put up with wrong in the world. We've raised fighters who will fight back and who will push back against the wrong in the world. And I think a lot of parents need to do that. There need to be more parents that step up and say, you don't have to live in a world that is forever this way. But in order to change it, you have to step up. You have to be the ones pushing back. You have to talk to people. You have to write to your legislators. You know, you have to protest against this. So, let's see. We have... I skipped one. No, I didn't. It's me being dyslexic. Chris Stewart gave us $10 and said, on feminist protesting Tumblr porn ban. The irony here is that Tumblr had the single largest concentration of male supremacy, misogyny, fetish porn blogs I know of, likely in response to radfems. That's a side of Tumblr I hadn't actually seen.
Me neither.
Honestly, I was introduced to Tumblr through another site, gather.com, that doesn't... It exists, but it's not what it was. It used to be a social networking site similar to the way MySpace was once set up, except if you sort of crossed MySpace and Reddit, you would get what Gather was, and then it had this reward system. If you got a lot of page views to your content, you got points, and you could spend the points on gift cards. So it attracted a lot of stay-at-home moms. And then I had a photo blog on there that I used to get enough points to get bookstore gift cards for the kids twice a year. But there were people that actually made like money on Gather, and it died. But when I was on Gather, I got introduced to Tumblr, to the photo blogs, and it was, you know, professional landscaping photos where somebody was you know, this is what this person's garden looks like, and this is what this person's garden, this is what we have done for the front yard of this person who pays more in taxes than you and your parents and your brother all put together make a year. And beautiful pictures, and I loved looking through those. Nothing like what Tumblr is today. So, that's, yeah. Regarding feminists protesting the Tumblr porn ban, the irony I see is that a lot of their content is going to end up getting banned, because they banned all adult content, including the heavily immature adult sexual content, and that's going to hit feminists, going to bite them right in the ass, pun intended.
I didn't even know that Tumblr was so heavily into porn. I mean, I guess I just didn't go on there very much myself, but that I guess I shouldn't be surprised, because after all, the internet is for porn.
That's true.
I'm allergic to Tumblr, so I can't say I've spent any time there.
The only quote-unquote time I spend there is generally on Reddit's Tumblr in action, just for the lulz, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. There were some Tumblr blogs that I liked back when I was on Reddit a lot, but I don't really do much with it now, so I'm not up on the controversy. But I will say this: the censorship, it's not a good thing that it's happening. It's what's really bad about it is the fact that, well, if it's true, the fact that it came about because of accusations that there was child porn on the site, and that, like, ban hammering everything banhammering everything on that's adult because of something that is reprehensible that isn't associated with the rest of it, kind of associates it in the minds of the people that are opposed to all adult content, and it sort of legitimizes the idea that you would associate adult porn and something reprehensible. I don't think that child porn should even be called that, because it normalizes it. It should just simply be called child exploitation media, and because it's not the same thing. It's not something normal. Like it's normal for adults to want to look at other adults nude. It's normal for people to be interested in the human body. It's not normal to get sexually turned on by children. There should be a dividing line in what we call it, and not just the fact that we point out that it's children. It's reprehensible, and to associate the two by banning things that are not exploitation of children, that's a wrong step in my opinion. But in any case, on with the next one. Exploding Prinny gave us $5 and said, "So we ban Baby It's Cold Outside and follow that with Kiss the Girl. What song should be banned next?" How about All About That Bass?
Yeah, no kidding. This song is god-awful.
We could put it out there with the Safety Dance and the Macarena and Achy Breaky Heart, and we'll just someday somebody needs to publish an album with all of those songs in it and just label it Earworms. French Honey Badger gives us $5 and says, "Porn, my only reason to go to Tumblr. December 16th will probably be the last day I go there." Yeah, I think Tumblr's going to kill itself by getting rid of its porn.
Yeah, probably. If you kill something that the majority of a site's users use it for, apparently, then yeah, you're gonna alienate some people.
Not making any friends there, Tumblr.
Yeah.
Not making any friends.
Nope, I think Tumblr's going to destroy, and they'll probably end up bringing back. Well, you can have what did Reddit label them? Gentleman boners and lady boners. That you can have classy porn, artistic nudes. I don't know. It'll be stuff like that.
Well, that's subjective as fuck.
Yeah,
no kidding.
So
we'll just bring back Venus de Milo and all that other stuff. It's like, here you go. You can have artistic nudes, and that's the only acceptable thing.
Yes, as opposed to Tumblr. Tumblr has autistic nudes. So the feminists look at them and they're like, in any case, that's our super chats. I don't think I have anything else added since then. So the last little bit I think I want to address on this. There were a couple of different articles I looked at here. Oh, we get another one as soon as I say we're done.
Of course.
Tatsumi Twee, I hope I pronounced that right, gave us $1.99, said they organized a log off for December 17th to tank stocks. So that'll be interesting. And of course, I think what Tumblr was trying to prevent was people logging off to their site. So
this goes to show, whenever you do anything to try and, like, I don't know, sway advertisers or be advertiser friendly or anything like that, it's like, okay, you know, you're gonna fuck yourself when you do this.
There's a phrase for that. It's called "go woke, get broke."
Yeah,
Exactly.
It's definitely gonna be a lesson. It's one of those growing pain things. These sites and these companies are gonna have to learn the hard way by giving in over and over again, that whenever they accommodate the nannies in society, the ones that want to police everything, they end up pissing off the majority out there that has been not complaining because they're satisfied to just use the site, or use the service, or go to the store or whatever. They're going to piss those guys off because they're going to take away something that they were enjoying. And it's going to end up costing some businesses before they figure out that doesn't work.
You never give in. You never capitulate. You never apologize. If you're going to say something, fucking mean it. You know, I don't walk that shit back because you give them an inch and they want every fucking thing else.
Yep. And it just
never going to be satisfied.
Yeah. No. And it just ends up like I said, costing the public access to the business, because the business dies and then there is nobody has access to it anymore. So there were some articles, there were some against and there were some for. One of the 4 articles that came out, if it's not a parody, they mentioned some of the doubts and everything. But unless this is different than the one I read, I think I'm opening the wrong link here. Sorry guys, this will just take me a second. I may have lost the article. But I had read one where they had talked about the fact that changes in custody and support would sort of force parents to find their way cooperating with each other. And while it might result in a little bit of conflict over the fact that they're dealing with less money going from the husband to the wife doesn't want to give up the time with the kids and everything, it would force them to put in effort to coordinate, and ultimately the kids would benefit because they would have the parents working together, and they would actually have the mentorship from both parents. And I can't find it. I thought I had it in my list of article links at the end, and it seems I have cut it off. So I don't know where it is. But there's several different people that had come out in support, and then there are people that had come out in opposition to this law. And I think the biggest objection that they made, this is an interesting one. One of the biggest objections that feminists made to this, and opponents made to this bill, was that it would reduce the divorce rate. And they just assumed that in reducing the divorce rate, because women couldn't walk out on their husbands, take the kids, take the house, take the income, and demand support, that they would not get divorced, that it would force people who didn't love each other to stay together, and that they would be in conflict in their homes all the time. So there's 2 things out of that. The first one is that they admitted that women are initiating more divorce in Italy, just like in the United States, and they're doing it because the consequences of being divorced, their half of the consequences of being divorced, are being transferred to their ex-husbands, so they don't have to experience them. And they don't care about the consequences the divorce is having on their children. They only care about the consequences the divorce is having on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really kind of messed up if you think about it, that they don't care about the effect that it's having on their children. It's like, how selfish can you possibly get? It just kind of astounds me. Like, I mean, I guess I can't expect all parents to have that whole selflessness, and I must do what's in the best interest of the children. But, you kind of have at least a little bit of that expectation. It still astounds me when I see people doing things that are demonstrably bad for their children, and yet they don't have a shred of guilt about it, and they will continue to do it even when people challenge them on it. And when you see people starting to say, okay, well, now mothers who might, or people who are, doing the parental alienation thing may wind up losing their children, as per that. There's an article that was talking about it I saw recently, but they were saying that parents who deliberately alienate their children from the other parent could wind up losing custody, and yet they probably see that as a slight against them. Yeah. No ounce of self-awareness. Like, it's fucked.
Well, I think when we're talking about the kinds of people, I'm using that term because I don't want to say women, even though we know that it's mostly women that do this. It's these are people who have children for the most selfish reasons to begin with. Now, I am of the opinion that there really is no real reason to have children. I'm very, yes, extremist. I don't know if that's really appropriate, but there's no real reason to have a child. A lot of people say, well, I want to pass down my genetics, or I have a legacy that I want to pass down. But a lot of these people that say that they have a legacy are people that don't really, like, your last myth. What's your legacy? I'm sorry. What have you done that determines that you have some sort of I guess, not nobility, I guess, for a, bad way to frame it, but what makes you think that you have something so great that needs to be passed down to the next generation? But I
Yeah, that's one that there are people that could get away with saying, that they have a legacy and everything. But it's
absolutely.
few and far between. It's a rare thing, and like I do not have a legacy that would be passing down. What I like my purpose in wanting to be a parent, I think the world, even with all of its flaws, is pretty awesome and a great place to share. And there's that. But humanity has got to change in some ways, because humanity is not as awesome as the rest of the world.
I would only disagree with what you said in the sense that I think that you do have a legacy to pass down, and it is exactly what we're doing right now. I really do believe that the honey badgers and men's rights and activists in general are trailblazers, because it takes a certain amount of courage to do what we do and express the views that we have.
Yeah,
and
there's that.
I really do think that there's something to be said for that. Hannah, you're not just another person. There's a reason that you had 7 marriage proposals. There's something, there's something about you, about your personality that is attractive, and that is because you don't look at other people in a way that you're not pretentious. You accept people as they are. You're not, one of these narcissistic, just
yeah, but you gotta quit, or my headphones aren't gonna fit by the end of the show. But that's the kind of stuff I do teach my kids, though, and that is a legacy to pass on. Like, this is how you have relationships with other people, and it's and enjoy the fact that they exist, and enjoy the fact that that they are different from you and have similarities to you, and you find your commonalities and you bond over your commonalities, and you find your differences and you take interest and joy in your differences, and like, that's basically what life with other human beings is all about. And honestly, like, the most horrible answer that you can give your kids is the truth about, what's the meaning of life? What's the purpose in life? What is life all about? Well, life is all about eating and fucking. That's what life is all about, okay? The meaning of life and the purpose of life, that's your decision. Nobody can give you that. You can't hand somebody meaning for their life. You can't hand somebody their purpose. It's their job. It's your job. Everybody's job to find that, right? But
Yeah.
the meaning of life is a totally different concept to what is life all about. That's life is all about preservation and passing on your DNA. That's, you look at everything on the planet. Everything on the planet does that. It eats and it passes on its DNA one way or another.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't necessarily think that, like, we ought to have, like, we ought to say that any one ideology has more right to breed over the other or anything like that. But
Yeah, no.
I mean, at the same time, like, I think that, like, no matter what political spectrum you fall on or ideology you hold to, I think it should be, like, it should be seen as really important to kind of put your kids first and try to raise them in such a way that they want to make the world better, that they want to serve their community in the way that they see best, right? I really, really see the importance in wanting to try to raise people to want to give back to others. That's something that I really want to pass forward, the drive to want to help your fellow man and just not be selfish and so turned inwards on yourself. I really do think that the whole narcissistic viewpoint is extremely damaging, no matter what side of the fence you're on.
There's a degree to which Ragnar says I forgot pooping. Yeah, that's important too. If you don't poop, you have to go into politics. But in any case, yeah. As far as people having kids and people not having kids, that's a personal choice, and everybody has their reasons for their choice, and it's not on us to really judge people's reasons and everything. The thing that I find important to discuss and the idea that I find important to promote is that wanting to have kids isn't enough. Wanting to be a parent isn't enough. You have to be willing to take on the responsibility. And what we're seeing with this particular topic is there are a significant amount of women, there are a significant amount of men, there are whole political ideologies out there that are centered around men and women wanting to have children without taking on responsibility for being parents. And it's more around mitigating women's accountability, women's responsibility, by dumping it on the men. So they're obsessed with blaming men for not wanting to be responsible for their parenthood. And they're obsessed with exempting women from responsibility for their parenthood. And the reality of it is, if you become a parent and you do not take responsibility for your parenthood, you are damaging not just your children, you're damaging yourself and your society, because you're bringing your children up in a way that they are not going to be there for you when you're old. You're bringing your your kids aren't going to take care of you in your old age if you didn't take care of them in their childhood. So, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Even if you don't care about your kids, if you care about yourself, you might want to invest a little bit more of your personal responsibility in them. And then the other end of it is, what are your kids going to be to society if you do not raise them to be responsible adults? Are they going to be taxpayers? Are they going to be contributors to the school of thought that society constantly evolves, where they learn new tools and learn new ways to improve the way we do things, to make it easier and safer for us, and create new forms of medicine and new forms of everything from the sciences to all the fields of entertainment? Or are they going to be a net drag on the system that gets a government check and does nothing else? And
see, my whole thing about having kids is that it's really is a crapshoot. You can raise them as best as you think, you can, but you don't know how they're going to turn out. Even best raised children turn into drugs.
Well, Lauren, you've gone really robo. Hang on a second.
Oh, sorry.
Do you have can you look at your Look at your Discord screen and see if your voice connected things is orange or green.
No, I think I'm green.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's still Robo. I don't know why it's doing that.
I don't know.
It must be your internet connection.
It has to be.
Okay, it's better now. Say it again.
Jesus, what the hell did I just say?
Well,
you were just
that's
saying,
the bad
you
thing
you can.
we were talking
You
about.
were just.
It
yeah,
being
you
a
were just
crapshoot
saying-
as to how they're going to grow up.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah, you know, even it doesn't matter how you raise your kids, even with the best intentions, they can still turn out to be shit. You know, you can't guarantee that your children are going to be there to raise you or, you know, take care of you when you're older. You know, when I was younger, I hated my parents. I completely wrote them off. You know, be there for them. Are you kidding me? No, but they provided me with shelter throughout my childhood. You know, they definitely supported me, but because of the relationship that I had with them, I didn't want to do anything for them. I did not care. So there's no guarantee that having children means that you will have some sense of security when you get older. None at all. You know, people die. Shit, your kids can die before you. So why going into it thinking that your child is going to be there to take care of you, to me, is foolhardy. But
no,
a
it's
lot
not
of
that
people,
kind of a it's not that kind of a statement. It's more, you know, this is you do reap what you sow. And then if your family is a household of conflict, it does make a difference. How kids are raised definitely does make a difference.
It does, but some people are just assholes.
Yeah. And there's the whole nature
true.
versus nurture thing. I see nature and nurture as both contributing to the way somebody grows up. But you know, somebody's nature, like I've seen people with horrible natures the horribleness of their nature is softened by nurture, and I've seen people with horrible lack of nurturing where the greatness of their nature has allowed them to rise above it. But yeah, the idea that you only have kids for that purpose would be bad too. But it is something that parents should consider. You know, are your kids going to be a part of your life when you're old? Are they going to walk away from you because you really didn't give them any care or consideration when they were growing up? And I've seen this happen with like particularly with women who have used their kids to mistreat their exes, and in the process they mistreat their kids. Then they expect, then when they're older, they expect their kids to maintain relationships with them after the kids are adults and the kids move away and don't want anything to do with them. And it's kind of, on one hand it's heartbreaking because you know there's a relationship there that could have been valuable and could have been part of your happiness as you go through your adulthood, and you don't have it because the person burned their bridges with you. But you know, on the other end of it, it's you, like I said, you reap what you sow, and when you push people away, they leave. That's you know, that's part of life. That's human beings do not they don't forget being pushed away. You know, and you hurt people, they act hurt because you hurt them, and that's life.
I think a problem that does happen is that even though a child can be hurt by their parent, they still feel a sense of duty to them. And it's like Stockholm syndrome, you know, this person has hurt you so badly, but you still feel a sense of duty because there is this stigma attached to the fact that it's your parent, so you have to care.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but if your parent is an asshole to you, you don't have to give a shit about them. I'm sorry. Love works both ways, you know?
Yeah.
And
although
so
somebody did point out in the chat, you end up taking care of your parents in your old age, whether you take care of them directly or whether you pay taxes. Because here in the U.S., you know, and I'm pretty sure any place that has socialized medicine in their old age, if they're not living with their kids, they're in a nursing home. And it's the Medicaid or Medicare system here, or other insurance systems that are tax funded in other countries. You know, and it's just an illusion that you're not really doing anything for your parents in their old age. But like my parents are aging, right? You know, they're in their 70s, and they're starting to need more like visits from me and things like that, where I've had to do things like temporarily fix the roof until the roofing guy gets there to do real roofing, and you know, small repairs around the house, and cleaning in areas that they just can't physically get to and stuff like that. And I know folks that are as old as them whose kids are nowhere near. Like, kids moved out of the state, kids moved out of the country, that you know, that they'd have to hire people to come in and take care of them because of that. And it's Medicare covering home health care. And when they eventually go into nursing care, like, I've worked in nursing homes, and most of the people who live in the nursing homes in my area are receiving insurance through Medicare. And so my tax dollars, your tax dollars, everybody's tax dollars that get paid into this system are going to fund their care. My grandparents lived with my parents until they passed away. And if the day comes, I'd like to be able to have my parents come live with me. And it's one of those, you know, my in-laws, the same thing. I think my older brother-in-law is going to want that with my in-laws. And it's you want your parents around if you're close to them. And so there are a lot of families that do that. And but my family was different. It wasn't just an intact family. It was a family that was like, we were all very bonded to each other. Not in terms of like we couldn't do things outside the family, but the first people we all wanted to tell something exciting to was the rest of the family. You know, you come home and you aced the final exam on a hard class at school. Come home and tell everybody in the family, guess what? You know, meet somebody that's really exciting to have gotten to know. You come home and tell the whole family, and it's that way at my house, and it's a different thing, but I guess that's why divorce is such a contentious issue for me. I see it as a destruction of something that should be the real safe space in the world, your household.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
For sure.
So, and it's not that I condemn people that go through that. It's just, it makes me sad.
Yeah,
so,
it's definitely not a pleasant thing, for sure.
Sad henna. We have a sad henna face. We have more super chats that I should go to. We have Exploding Prinny gives us $5 and says, I want to see the Badgers fight feminists, dual foxes, no weapons on Final Destination. I'm only willing to fight feminists under one circumstance. I want
on Twitter.
Yeah, no, I want the Star Trek fight music. And there must be a weapon involved that you have to hold with two hands. So that's all I ask. And it's not a keyboard. But Chris Stewart gave us $1.99 and said, I want to propagate the human race. Bad reason? You know, that depends on whether you like humans or you hate humans. You know, if you hate humans, that's a bad reason. If you like humans, it's a good reason.
There's no good reason.
Well, there's no good reason for any creature in the world to reproduce, but we all do it.
Well, yes,
Yeah.
there's no stopping the force of nature.
Yeah. Nope, there is no stopping the force of nature, but we can definitely change ours. This is something that I like. Are seeing these strategies feminists use, the consistent demonization. My solution to that is information. We've talked about the benefits of father involvement, and what I'm seeing with this trend or this strategy among feminists, they see equally shared parenting legislation proposed, and they immediately attack with like 3 prongs. The first prong is the assertion that dads are deadbeats and they only want custody of their children to get out of child support. The second one is the assertion that dads are abusers, and if they have if a woman cannot take all of the assets of a marriage with her when she goes and maintain custody of her children, that she'll be forced to stay with an abusive husband because she can't cut him out of everything and still keep his wallet. And the third one is that same assertion that dads are abusive endangers the children, because obviously if the wife accuses him of being abusive, then he will abuse the children as well. So that's their sort of their 3-pronged attack, or sort of 2 of those prongs are attached to each other, right? And they're based on generalizing dysfunctional behavior to all men, but they're also based on presuming women entitled to maintain that one aspect of the marriage, that access to the resources from the marriage. That once a man marries her, he owes her his resources for the rest of his life or for the rest of her life, whichever is shorter, and can't get out of that. So what needs to be done to counter it is legislators that see these laws proposed. When they see these laws proposed, they also need to be given information. One, that demonstrates the benefit of fathers to their children. And 2, that demonstrates that abuse is actually not as common as these feminists are trying to make it seem. And therefore, the idea that women can't get out of abusive relationships should not prevent the majority of fathers from having equally shared parenting rights. And 3, it needs to be very clear what the law is going to do. They can't. Part of that forced staying in the marriage prong, it relies on claiming that a law that's going to stipulate that in uncontested divorces, this is what will happen with custody, is going to force judges to give equally shared parenting rights regardless of the situation. And that's not true with these laws. These laws are all bottom lines. They're all defaults when nobody comes in and says, well, I want to file for custody, or I want to file for a change in the property division. So that's basically what needs to happen with efforts to get equally shared parenting laws passed. Is that instead of waiting for feminists to attack the law and then cleaning up afterwards, proposals for equally shared parenting rights really need to include all of that information in the proposal. And I think with that, unless there's any last thoughts from my co-hosts, we're going to get ready to end the show and go into the after show.
I think you just about summed everything up there with that nice little rant at the end. Good job.
Thanks. All right. Well, in that case, thanks you guys both for coming on tonight, and thanks everybody for listening. And a big thank you to all of our contributors and everybody who helps behind the scenes to make Honey Badger Radio happen, and to make Badger Talk in particular, HBR Talk in particular, happen. And good night, all.